Um, how did this come about? Because it's such an eccentric subject for a film.
The Disaster Artist. So most people that live in the LA area know the room has been around for 14 years. It came out in 2003. Tommy Wiseau made this thing, and basically what my movie's about. And he kept it in theaters for 2 weeks to apply to qualify for Academy, consideration and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then nobody saw it. And then he played it. He got Sunset 5 on theater on Sunset Boulevard to play it at midnight on the weekends. And then these film students came and saw it and then told their friends about it. And then gradually over time it became this phenomenon. And then, people like some of my friends, Jonah Hill and Paul Rudd and Michael Cera, and, would go and see it, and it became this thing. But I didn't catch on to it when it was happening. There was all I really knew about it is there was this billboard with this phone number on it on like La Brea or Highland, and Tommy's face, looking down with this lazy eyelid, and it just looked scary. And I didn't know what it was because most movie billboards don't have phone numbers on them, and I just thought it was like a cult or something. It's just what could that be? And I just sort of blocked it out as like probably just filed it away like, wow, LA is weird, just weird stuff in LA. And then the book, so I had never seen The Room, and then the book came out, The Disaster Artist came out about 4 or 5 years ago. Greg Sestero wrote it with this great journalist named Tom Bissell. And I saw it on somebody pointed it out to me, and I saw it on the New York Times book review, and I got it and just read it immediately. And before I was halfway through, I just knew, you get the hairs tingling on the back of your neck. You're like, this is an incredible story. I love Hollywood stories.
Yeah.
I love stories about the artistic process. I love stories about outsiders. And here was something that had all of that also had two elements, like I've been talking about all the way through. On the surface, it was unlike any Hollywood story. It was so wacky and such wild characters that were actually real. But underneath, it's completely universal. Everybody that's come to Hollywood, or anybody that's pursued any kind of dream knows what it's like to start on the outside and try and break in, and how hard that can be. Anybody, any creative profession, or probably any profession, it's like, no, it's hard in the beginning, and how do you make it in? And so I just thought, this is great. This has everything that I have been interested in as a filmmaker, and a storyteller up to this point. But unlike, maybe the Faulkner adaptations or the Cormac McCarthy adaptations and necrophilia, stories, this has the potential to, have a real, audience for it. And so the sort of smarter, collaborative side of my brain said, James, you should probably give this to Seth Rogen to produce, because he knows how to work with studios and still make the movies that he wants to make. So I brought it to Seth. We were making the interview at the time in Vancouver. Yeah.
Were you scared about that whole fallout, or?
That's a whole other story. We'll never get out of here. But when we were making it, we weren't scared. We were like, this is crazy. We're making this fun movie, So I gave him the book, and then we hired these amazing writers, Neustadt and Weber, who had done 500 Days of Summer, and then once it started going, like it wasn't too hard. Like we got New Line to finance it. 3 guys at New Line were like huge Room fans. Mike Disco and this guy Neustadt and this guy Brenner, and so they were all on board. And then once we were filming, like Seth, he was like, he's much more tied into the comedy community than I am, but he's like, I've never had a movie where I've had more people say, they were jealous that we were making this thing. Wow. Yeah, so everybody wanted to be involved in it, and so I didn't even. I had an incredible casting director on it.
The cast.
I didn't meet the casting director once because we just had so many people that wanted to be. It was like I didn't know we needed to go into a casting room. It was like, Okay, we'll have, you know.
Describe your first meeting with Tommy.
I talked to him first on the phone, okay? So I had to get his life rights. I had read the book at that point. That was it. And in the book, you know, like there's sort of Tommy before the room and Tommy after the room. Tommy before the room was not a collaborative guy because, you know, understandably, he was very defensive. His whole life he had been told no. Now, partly that's of his own making because he's going out into Hollywood saying, you know, I'm the next James Dean, next Marlon Brando, and everybody's like, I don't see it, dude. Like, no. And but I was a little worried, like, this guy, you know, he just came off as a control freak, you know, and that he wasn't very good at listening. And so I needed to get his life rights, and I was just like, as soon as I get those, I don't know, it's probably better if this guy isn't around. Might try and take over, you know, directing or whatever. So he's on the phone with Greg. I knew I wanted to play him, and I knew I wanted my brother to play Greg because my brother and I just had that dynamic. We had done this Funny or Die series of, you know, little fake acting, you know, classes, and I sort of played the ridiculous acting teacher that gives horrible advice, and he plays sort of the straight man that's just looking at me like I'm insane. That's sort of the relationship between, you know, Greg and Tommy, and so I knew I wanted, you know, to play the part, and my brother played the other part, but I didn't know how Tommy would feel about that, so I didn't want to put that forward, and you know, there wasn't much to talk about, so, you know, like, why you like the story, and like, well, it's a great, incredible story, Tommy, you know, and you like the room? Yeah, the room, I love the room, and then finally he's just like, so who play me? And and I didn't want to say me in case he didn't like that idea. I didn't have the contract yet, and I was like, I don't know, Tommy. Who do you think? And he's like, well, how about Johnny Depp? And that was my exact reaction. I laughed, and he's like, why are you laughing? And I was like, well, Johnny Depp's like the biggest movie star around, and maybe it might be a little hard, and we keep talking. I'm trying to, you know, go on to other subjects. So maybe we'll talk to your agent about it. And he's like, no, I go back to before. You know, I said Johnny Depp, and you laugh. Why you laugh? I'm like, all right. I guess I'm not getting away from the Johnny Depp topic, and I'm like, all right, Tommy. I'll ask Johnny. You know, when we get going, I'll ask Johnny. We'll see where we're going. He's like, you know, you don't go down the road. You don't know what at the end of the alley, right? And, you know, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And then Greg said, how about you, James? And I still didn't know what Tommy was gonna think of it. I guess I sort of knew Tommy was a James Dean fan, but I didn't know that he had watched my movie as James Dean or anything. I learned subsequently he'd watched it many times, and so Greg was sort of, Greg wanted us to, you know, Greg wanted us to do it, and so he was sort of teeing it up, and he's like, how about you, James? And I was like, maybe, it's an idea, and Tommy was like, I've seen your stuff, James, and you do some good things, you do some bad things. Oh, wow. And I'm like, thanks, man. You know, it means a lot coming from you. And then he says, yeah, you know, James, maybe I direct you in a movie someday, huh? And I'm like, yeah, maybe, Tommy, yeah, maybe.